12, text 36, 35, 34, 35, 36. Sorry, I'm a little bit late this morning, but we have a very interesting purport. It's just around the time when the birth of Emperor Parikshit, so we're just coming to the end of that chapter, and I was explaining about Maharaj Yudhishthira, who, after the Battle of Kurukshetra, felt completely devastated because he actually was in charge of the armies. The fighting was done on his behalf, and he was unrightfully, his throne was taken away basically, and he wanted to just accept any type of provision for himself to continue, but the opposing party was very, very negative towards that and wanted just to wipe him out. So he had to fight, and but in the course of the fight, of course, many millions of people were killed because it was like a world war. In any case, that was written 5,000 years ago, and Bhagavad Gita was spoken at that time. So now we're in the Srimad-Bhagavatam, which kind of gives the background story of that, of the Bhagavad Gita. And so today's verse is text 34. I'm going to read the Sanskrit. Tena sambrita sambharo dharma putro yudhisthara vajimedas tribir bito yagyai samayajat darim. By those riches the king could procure the ingredients for 3 horse sacrifices. Thus the pious King Yudhishthira, who was very fearful after the Battle of Kurukshetra, pleased Lord Hari, the personality of Godhead. So these particular sacrifices were very difficult to perform because they required a vast amount of money, and I was never at one that I can remember, so I can't exactly say what it was like. There's descriptions in the Bhagavatam is that so much opulence, wealth. It was like a huge festival, bringing together hundreds of thousands of people, and also some of the denizens from higher planetary systems would come down for these particular festivals, and in fact the whole government of the universe would be there. So that gives you some sort of idea of the cosmic nature of these sacrifices. It's said that today they're not performed because there's no one really knows how to utilize them. They were actually based on sound vibration, to bring all the great denizens of the heavenly planets to the arena. I suppose you could think about sometimes like the Olympic Games. I remember, I think I was in Spain and I saw the Olympic Games from Beijing. There was a huge ceremony where thousands of people danced in unison. There was firework displays. There was planes going overhead. There was just displays of pomp and power. Now, what was the function of that? It was a lot of it was to show the military might of the Communist Party, you could say. But again, the French would do the same. The USA would do a similar thing to show their great ability. The British did it as well in their Olympics. But the difference is that there is a recognition that the original source of all of this wealth, might, universe is a supreme person whom we call Kṛṣṇa. So the function there was to please Kṛṣṇa, was to offer everything back to Kṛṣṇa. And this is a factor that is in all spiritual systems, and that is that it is gratitude, being grateful for the items that we have yourself, that we're living off. We have the air we breathe, we've got light, we've got eyesight, we've got so many, the sunshine, the moon. These are all things that people take for granted. I take for granted. But in fact, these are very, very special. One example is that I go out in the morning time to chant, and not every morning, but a lot of mornings, and you hear the birds getting up and they're very excited about the day, and the sun is starting to rise, and a few days ago the sunshine was out, and you actually see that, wow, this is an amazing happening. But if I was lying in bed, I wouldn't really see it, and I'd think, oh, it's just a day, I'll go and eat my breakfast. But not realising, I'll go down to Tesco's and buy something so I can eat, that all of these things are happening by a much greater force. If the sun wasn't rising, there would be no grains for your cornflakes. These things are easily forgotten in the modern context. But in our context, where we're trying to realize that and then give thanks, like you see that in most civilizations around the world, there is always that aspect of giving thanks for what we have. Even the grace before meals, you might say, in the Christian tradition. But of course, in Sanskrit or in the Vedic tradition, there was much greater emphasis on that. Patram pushpam phalam tayam yome bhakcha pranashati. If one offers me with love and devotion a fruit, a flower, a leaf, or water, I will accept it, Krishna says. So Krishna makes it really, really easy. He's not looking for huge sacrifices in this age. But if we actually just offer him with love and devotion something, then he'll accept it and he'll be very pleased with it. Because it's the emotion of which it's given, which it's offered, the feeling of gratitude. This is what we're trying to achieve. So Maharaj Yudhishthira was doing this great yajna, and there did appear to be a purpose behind it. In other words, to try to neutralize all the sinful activity, because so many people were killed in the war, and he was taking responsibility for it because it was to put him on the throne. That's the way he thought, even though he had been subsequently explained by Krishna, or Arjuna was anyway, that all these living entities have been destroyed by my will anyway. So Krishna was explaining to Arjuna that this was already going to happen. But the reason I want to get to that point is that almost everything that we touch in this material world is polluted. It is got by some ill-gotten way. We take anything that we take, for example, for instance, the phone that I'm, using at the moment. Where was the plastic got for that? Where's the electricity that was used to charge up the phone? Who got that? Where did it come from? The camera, all the plastic. What's going to happen to it afterwards? Everything in this world is covered. It's material. It's everything has to be paid for. Basically, that's what I'm saying. But the one method by which all of this can be, or the karmic effect of everything that we do can be neutralized, and in fact can be augmented to be very beneficial, is by offering the results to Krishna and offering the activity to Krishna, to God. That takes the intelligence in the human form of life. Like yesterday when I had the window open and wasps kept on coming in. They're not conscious of what they're doing or where they are or anything, basically. Trees are not conscious. Other living entities are not conscious. But in the human form of life, yagyartat karmanon yatra lokoyam karma bandhana, is that work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed. Otherwise, work causes bondage in this material world. So we have to learn the art of existing here in this world karma-free. and not creating future bondage. Otherwise, work causes bondage in this world. That's the verse what it explains. And this is given to us by Kṛṣṇa, who's the owner of everything. So we have to become very intelligent to learn how to live in this world. Now, today it's more complicated than ever before. You put out your rubbish, but where does the rubbish go? Where is it buried? Who takes the responsibility? Just because you pay your $8.95 per bin to Panda, does that mean to say you've no more karmic result from getting rid of rubbish into the earth and possibly destroying Mother Nature? Is it the wrappings from your packet of bread or whatever that you bought, or the glass that you bought your marmalade? Sorry, I'm telling all the things that I eat. Is that, where did you get that? Who owns that? And now you're throwing it away. Where's all that happening? Is there no result from that? That's like saying that anybody can go into a store and just grab anything and then just run off with it. Because that's the nature of the living entity in this world, is using everything for the self-enjoyment and so on, or the family, the extended, or the country, the more extended family. The whole systems that we've set up, the whole industrial civilization, makes us less conscious of our karmic debt. So therefore, we really should be trying to live in a different way. And I don't know if I can do it. 1 second, I just want to read something. This is something which we're making a presentation to Fingal County Council. And the idea is that we are to showing them why what we do is relevant to society at large and why we're looking for some land. It was an introduction that was written by one of our devotees, Lalita, and I just thought it very, very nicely, just how it encapsulated Srila Prabhupada's mission, and also to put it in a context where people can understand it. People sometimes think, oh, the Hare Krishna, there you go, you're making a funny noise on the street and singing and dancing, they're a bit crazy. But no, there's a lot more happening. And gradually we're trying to make some impact in society. Let me read this. The International Society for Krishna Consciousness is a charity dedicated to caring for people and the planet. Fueled by the dedication of our volunteers, we serve two main aims. 1, to improve people's lives physically, emotionally, and spiritually. And 2, to help our planet and the environment. It is well known for its vegetarian food relief worldwide, its educational and social programs, its colourful cultural festivals, and its eco-farms. Founded in 1966, it renders accessible the ancient Bhakti Yoga tradition of India, going back thousands of years. That's a very, very important point. It renders accessible the ancient Bhakti Yoga tradition. And then the attribution to our founder, Acharya. From its inception, the founder, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, envisioned the unsustainable nature of industrialism and thereby established ecological farming communities in pursuance of self-sufficiency, which continues to thrive at present. Today, the movement has grown to 700 centres, including over 60 eco-villages, many of which have received environmental awards and governmental recognition. Its Cow Protection and Agricultural Ministry is committed to coordinating efforts and organising farming conferences around the world. So, to me, that's Bhagavatam in action, that is what we are trying to bring to the table in the world scenario. We're trying to set up karma-free lifestyles. Not only the carbon footprint being very, very low, but karma footprint being even lower. That's what we're bringing to the table. And Prabhupada was completely convinced of this. The purport here, I'll just read some of it. But because it's a long purport, it's 3 pages. I should advise anybody to read if they want it. Maharaj Yudhisthira was the ideal and celebrated pious king of the world, and still he was greatly afraid after execution of the Battle of Kurukshetra because of the mass killing in the fight, all of which was done only to install him on the throne. He therefore took all the responsibility for sins committed in the warfare, and to get rid of these sins, he wanted to perform 3 sacrifices in which horses are offered on the altar. Such a sacrifice is very costly. Even Maharaj Yudhisthira had to collect the necessary heaps of gold left by Maharaj Marutta. Anyway, the next section goes and explains about what that means. But there was gold reserves left by a king at one point, but everyone knew where that gold was, but nobody touched it because they realized that it didn't belong to them. So, and another thing that you realize from the society of that time is that the state citizens were completely satisfied with all necessities of life and therefore not inclined to accept unnecessary productive enterprises for sense gratification. And neither did Maharaj Yudhisthira want it either. So people didn't want the gold. That's what one thing is, that it said that the mark of a gentleman or a gentle lady is that you don't actually covet another person's goods. You know, you're not. You think that you understand that it's not yours; it belongs to somebody else. Ultimately, it belongs to God. But that you realize that the property of others is not yours, and so you don't usurp it. So that's the type of society that we're trying to establish. We're trying to live that ourselves, and it may seem like a timid approach, specifically because there are so many sharks and people who are out to exploit each other. But what is the point in living in that mode of ignorance way? Better to find people that you can live with in a more passively, more with recognition of higher values, because then we can stay in that situation. Not that you have to stay and being kind of like bury yourself and forget about all that's happening around you. We can offer what we're trying or what we're attempting to others to participate in. And you find that today more and more people are so exacerbated by such a difficult lifestyle they're trying to live, such an artificial lifestyle, that they cannot find any peace in society. So therefore we're trying to offer a certain element of that peace that that people can avail of. But of course it's not some cheap thing. You can't just buy it with money. You have to live it with your life. And that is where there is the most effort needed. That you can't afford to be lazy. Lazy means lack of progress and probably going in the opposite direction. Mode of ignorance, definitely that's what it means. Mode of passion, you're running like crazy, but you're standing in the same spot, possibly even going backwards. Mode of goodness means that you're creating your future. You're creating the future. That's what mode of goodness means, by your activities in the present. You realize how your activities in the present, how they affect the future. So you learn how to live in the present so that your future can be bright. You learn how to be non-karmic in your activity, in every activity, every thought even. Then you learn to see what's actually happening, because you're able to extract your ego from what's actually happening, and you can see what's happening then. And even more positively, Premanjana Churita Bhakti Velochanena Santal Sadaiva Hridayosha Velokayanti, from the Brahma Samhita, is you can actually develop eyes of love to see the world and to see God. People say, oh, if God was like this, why is this happening? Why isn't that happening? Well, if you really want to know, then you have to practice bhakti yoga. You have to practice vision, the shastra chakshu, seeing through the eyes of scripture what is actually happening, not your construct of what's actually happening. Because what is the cause of the cause of the cause of the cause? You know, people innocently do things, but they're actually involved in huge karmically destructive habits, you know, getting their electricity, getting their water, getting their sewage removed, eating their food. So much karmic involvement today. So we have to learn how to live in amidst this situation, but at the same time be karma free. But when we can see what is happening, then we can learn why we love. We learn who to love. We learn where love is coming from. Not that it's, of course, the most, Sri Ram Swami is making this point, the most abused word in the English language, love. You know, everybody loves. But what does it mean to love? And that takes actual graft, you know. It's not just something which, I can love. You can't. It's just like Maharaj Yudhisthira here. He's stuck in a situation where he'd been involved in something, and he felt himself that he'd accrued so much karma. So we're in the same situation in our own lives. But we have to learn to love the supreme source, and which is beyond karma. The mode of goodness, as I was speaking earlier, is a platform from which to take off from. And we can then learn how to love the planet. Krishna, another place says, for one who sees me everywhere and sees everything in me, I'm never lost, nor is he ever lost to me. So we have to develop that ability to see through the eyes of scripture and through the heart. The heart is such an important thing. The heart is there in which we love. The heart is the kind of the place where the soul is seated. So when you're giving your heart and your soul to something, it means you're giving everything. So patram pushpam phalam tayam yome bhaktan parashati. We can express our love for Krishna by offering everything back to him. So this whole purport is about offering everything back to Krishna, to God, because he's the source of everything. He owns everything. He doesn't. It's like people that worship the Ganga by taking a pan full of water and offering it to the Ganga, but the Ganga is the water. So you're offering something that's already owned by the Ganga or the river. But that's the nature of living in this world. We are the soul, and we're able to use our faculties while in this world to offer back to God, even though we don't own anything. But Krishna sees the effort and the motivation in our heart. So these are some very interesting points there. Again, about we do commit unintentional sins without even knowing. So it says here, the main purpose of performing sacrifices is to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And of course, that's just getting us back to the final yajna. At that time, there was ways in which you offered great sacrifices in that sense, and recognizing God and the even more subtle human being, subtle living entities, the greater government heads of the universe. They would appear at these sacrifices. Now that's not actually so easily available. It's not available at all. They don't come here. But the method then becomes very much more easy in this Kali age. And that is by the Sankirtan movement, by the chanting of the holy name. We have so many duties to perform, like we have so many letters from the bank, from the government. We have to so many obligations to so many people. But when we chant congregationally the holy names of Krishna or of God, then we lose all that sense of obligation and anxiety, and we start to experience a happiness and a joy, which is our actual position. So we can see how much we are out of kilter by the degree of anxiety we experience while living in this world, because the soul is by nature full of bliss and happy, eternal, all of those things. But in this world, it's full of anxiety because it identifies with the anxiety of this world. So if we are feeling that blissfulness in performing service to God, then we'll understand that we're actually getting the benefits of life here in this world, and we're getting the experience of what it is to be a living entity. So Maharaj Yudhishthira wanted to perform this yajna so that he could feel more happy in relation to God in the world after the difficulty that he went through. So in the same way, by ourselves, by our chanting and by our congregational chanting, which is very, very powerful, chanting together, we'll experience those greater levels of happiness. Kirtana eva Krishnasya mukta sangha parambrajet, that we chant the holy name without offence. By so doing, we can be freed from all sins and thus attain the highest perfection of life by returning home back to Godhead. The Lord declared openly in Bhagavad Gita, he becomes pleased with us, and the same process was practically demonstrated in the life and preaching work of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The perfect process of performing yogas or sacrifices to the Supreme Lord Hari, who is free from all miseries. So that's really the main purport behind what in Prabhupada's purport, that in this age there's none of us qualified to perform all of this, these great yagyas which were performed in previous ages, but it becomes simpler. So for ourselves, we get together and we chant and we chant and we chant more and more. We arrange for chanting, we arrange for greater festivals, and we arrange these things all of the time so that we're always, if we're not chanting, we're arranging for chanting. And that way we will be happy in this world, and we learn how to live in this world as well. Okay, I'll stop there. That's thank you for listening. That's today's Tuesdays, the 6th of April 2021, and hope you have a great day, and hopefully some of the things that we've been talking about, how to perform our activities in this world, in this day, and do them as an offering to God, and that will purify our existence, especially in the matter of eating and of chanting, of praying. Hare Krishna.